All right, good evening, gamers, and welcome to another episode of Games with Dave. Tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by an amazing creator joining us all the way from Australia, Russ. And I forgot to ask you how to say your last name. Is it Allert?
We pronounce it Allert, but a lot of people just say Alert, whatever.
Allert. Oh, we'll go with Allert. That's how I sounded it out.
we dropped the R for some reason.
We do that in Maine a lot too. So, yeah. But Russ currently has a Kickstarter running for the first 8 issues of his totally awesome zine, D12 Monthly. This is a zine that he publishes via his Patreon. I almost said Kickstarter again. And he's been running it for about 3 years now. And the Kickstarter ends next Thursday if you're on Australian time, and next Friday if you're on US time. So you should jump down to the link below and back it, and also hop into Russ's Patreon because he puts out a lot of awesome material. And as you can see, I've got a few of them here. I love this scene, man. Welcome to the show. First of all,
did you order them through the website or?
No, I've been on your Patreon since.
Because I saw your name, and
it used to just be my name, Dave Townsend, and then I switched.
Yeah, I don't think I connected. Yeah, I don't think I connected the Daves together.
That's all right.
Sorry for that.
That's all good.
Thank you for your support.
Oh, I love this, and I've got to ask you first: what is your favorite cover of all the zines?
See, Dean Spencer does a lot of the covers, the art that I use for covers, but I've been trying to sort of use a bit more diversity in the cover lately. I don't know if I've got a favorite. Actually, I really like number 1, I think it is, or actually number 0, like the first one with the wizard doing the shield.
I am missing the first 9-10 issues. Those are the only ones I'm missing. I've been on since issue 12.
You can get them through the website if you just want to buy them.
Excellent. Yeah, I've got to finish getting them so I can have the whole collection. I'm a completionist.
It used to be called D8, but then I got a cease and desist letter, so I changed it to D12.
Oh no.
So there's some guy out there who wanted me to send him the 2 issues that I did for D8 monthly. I think he just wanted them as collector pieces. And then because there was an old zine back in the 80s, I think, that was called D8. And the guy I had no idea, because like you do a quick search and make sure the name's not being used, but it didn't come up. So he sent me a nice email saying I still own the rights to the D8. So I said, is D12 okay?
Well, I'm glad you were able to work it out. So what was it really with you that lit the spark 3 years ago to begin making this zine?
I think the spark was that I was looking to do something on YouTube. But having 2 kids and a job and family and all that sort of stuff, I could never find quiet time to do it, like to do recordings and stuff. And I guess I also kind of thought, like it's a flooded market at the moment. Like there's a lot of talking heads giving, advice for D&D and stuff. And I kind of didn't want to do that. And then ironically, I was looking at YouTube and I found a YouTube channel that told you how to make a zine really easily through Google, the Google Word equivalent, whatever it's called these days, Google Drive. And so I watched that and I was like, actually, I could do this. Because with videos, you gotta sit down and you gotta do the video, and then you gotta go and edit it, and then you've got to do a whole lot of other things. And
that's why I do everything live.
You kind of had we'll do everything live. You kind of had to have set blocks, like an hour or 2, just to do all the recordings and stuff. And I just didn't have that time. So I thought the zine's good because if I bring it out once a month, I've got the whole month to work on it, and I can do like half an hour here, an hour there. It just fitted in with my schedule way better. And to be honest, I'm sort of glad I did go that way now, looking at how YouTube, like there's a lot of long-time YouTubers that are quitting because it's just too much for them. And They're not getting the same, audiences that they used to because of the algorithms and all that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of happy with the print, and I kind of wanted, when I first started, I was really I've been inspired by Dragon and Dungeons and all those old magazines from the 80s and 90s. And and when I looked around at the zines that were available, they were all sort of these artsy, kind of like full-on graphic designed pieces with probably good content, but for my old eyes, it was just too much. And I kind of went, well, there's nothing that's really emulating Dragon that's still around. And so I kind of went that way. Like I kind of use the format that I use, and I reuse that every issue, so I don't have to worry about layout and all that stuff. And then I just filled it with content that I liked, from 40 plus years of gaming. Yeah, so and I never run out of ideas. I've got so many ideas about stuff.
Well, I can, like I said, I can tell you don't run out of ideas. This is a testament to it. And that's actually, like, I have a lot of ideas, but you have like a galaxy worth of ideas in these zines. And I'm just like, holy cow, how has this guy gone from issue 0 up to issue 37 now coming out?
I'm working on 38 at the moment.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get 37. That's the one with the knoll on the cover, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm working on. Oh, I lose track. 37, 38. I work on, like, I usually do like a block, like, so with each issue has a theme, which I sort of started even with issue 1 after the first one. The first one was like an 8-page trial, just to see if people were interested, and then people were, and so I just kept it going. And I went from eight pages to 12 to, like, and now it's up to, I think, 28 for patrons, and if you buy it, and then 20 for the free version. I lost my thought track. What was the question again?
Oh, that's all right. I said I'm just
ideas and stuff. Yeah. So what I normally do is I put a block. Like I'll think about, okay, like with the current one, it's exploration. So I'm doing a 3-part sort of issues, I guess, is around dungeon exploration was the first one. Wilderness is the next one, like the next month's one.
Yep.
And then the city exploration after that. And so I tend to work on blocks of them together, so I can kind of have the same articles and stuff. And the last issue was the first issue that I've kind of changed the format a little bit. I have like sort of 3 to 4 main articles that deal with the theme. And then I have about half a dozen regular features that I'm going to be doing each time. Because sort of like what Dragon used to do, like they used to have their, like the sage advice and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
They used to have their regular features, but this is sort of around, solo play, NPCs, characters, all that sort of stuff. So and each of those will fit into the theme of that issue. So the whole thing is sort of based around one issue. But I like those sort of smaller regular articles, and I like the idea of those. So I'm going to keep that going for a while and see how it goes.
Nice. I love the format of it. And Alex, the map maker, I forget I can pop stuff up on the screen. Check this ad out. I can pop it up there. He said, "Hey there, how's it going, Alex?" Now you do a lot of work with Alex. I
do. Yeah, he's an old time friend. We were friends in school, and we're still friends.
That's awesome.
And his map making and art is just awesome. I think he's worked for some of the larger studios as well. So I'm very lucky to have a qualified artist, and he actually has a Patreon as well. So if you want to check that out, I think Alex the Map Maker.
Alex, feel free to throw a link in the comments so people can check it out. So we just mentioned themes. Do you find that do you have like a favorite theme that you've kind of, I tried going through all these and taking a bunch of notes the other night, and I got so confused. Like, not confused, I just got lost. Like, because I would find myself, instead of just jotting notes down, I'd find myself engrossed in what I was reading.
As far as favorite themes, I really like the terrain issues that I did. So I did I think it was a 5 or 6 part issue around the late 20s, early 30s, and they
I think it was like 26.
Forest and jungle, desert and badlands.
I've got the mountain one right here, I believe.
Yeah, the mountains, hills and mountains and stuff. So that was a really cool sort of group of issues to work on. And I really like the idea of doing that, because there's so much, like when you talk about terrains and stuff, it's usually just monsters and random encounters.
Yep.
So I couldn't really find anything which just talked about how to survive those, especially things like jungle, and even forests and deserts. Like, there's rules from like AD&D, like the Wilderness Survival Guide and stuff like that. But it's all really full on. Like one of the favorite things I like to do is take those kind of full on complicated rule sets and then just boil them down to their fundamentals and just have it really simple. And that's one of the themes that you'll probably find throughout my zines, where I've taken ideas from a lot of the older and even newer stuff and then just boiled it down and made it really easy. And I think a great example of that is the old AD&D weapon versus armor table.
Yes.
So I basically, and I'm probably not the first person to do this, but I just boiled it down to like, slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing versus, chain, leather, and mail. So, and I made it like a damage, like a what's the word I'm looking for? So you roll different damage depending on what you're using, but it's only 3 versus 3 rather than a 1-page table with every individual weapon listed and then the armor. So I like doing that stuff, like just taking a really cool concept and then just making it simple for people to actually add into the game if they want to.
Yeah, they were definitely known for being more crunchy back in the day.
And don't get me wrong, I love crunch.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. But when I can just grab something like this and be like, oh, this is simple, and open up and be like, oh, life and death, and it's like, instead of it covering a whole page, it covers
and I think the driving force behind that is really what I got out of the old Dragon magazines and stuff, was just inspiration. Like, you just read something, like, you don't have to add it in, or you don't have to do it the way that I've written it, but just to get your mind thinking about it and going, hey, that's cool. Oh, I've got an idea for that. That's, so yeah.
Nice. You brought up the Wilderness Survival Guide. I loved the cover for that. And then also the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide from AD&D. That was such a great cover of the guy climbing up. And it's like he's just getting jumped on.
Unfortunately, I don't have them in print. I'd love to have those in print, but I've only got PDF versions.
Same here. I'm with you. All my old books just went away over the years. And
I kept some of the ones, but I moved states. And when you move states, you kind of just want to offload stuff. And so I've offloaded a lot of old stuff, but I kept my sort of favorite RPGs. And then I sort of, over the last few years, I've sort of reclaimed a lot of the D&D stuff that I'd sort of left behind, or I'd gone missing, or that I'd never had, But it is getting pretty pricey these days.
It is. Yeah. I mean, some of the books nowadays run upwards of $200 to $300.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah.
If I had it, I would spend it, but
I have been lucky twice, because I'm sort of collecting all the Dragon magazines slowly. And I've been lucky. I've had 2 sort of friends, one really good friend and one sort of friend of a friend, do this whole dump of magazines and old, D&D books that they no longer wanted. And that was cool. That was really good. So there's still stuff that I haven't been able to read, but again, it's just all juice for the imagination for the zines.
I've got like way too many books. At least that's what I'm told. And I don't think there's such a thing, but
my wife would probably disagree with that.
But that's really all they are. They're logs for the fire, so to speak.
Well, and I as I said the other night, I said, I use them. I sit there and read them, over and over again.
Yeah.
They're just inspiration for me, I think.
And I said it before, man, I can't stop staring at that poster behind you. I love that movie.
Yeah, man. I was actually late to the party with that one. I had a friend told me about it only a few years ago, and I'd never come across it before, which is kind of crazy because I love those old 80s movies. And I watched it and I just fell in love with it. And then I realized there was a documentary, and bought and watched that, and that was just amazing. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, I think the documentary was what actually spawned them re-releasing it. And
yeah, I think there was I think they'd lost, if my memory serves me from the doco, I think they lost most of the copies of it, and they found one in New Zealand randomly. And then there was a small theater and said, "Oh, hey, we've got to show this film." And then the owner was like, "Oh, why do you want to show this film? Like, no one likes this. No one can remember. It was a bomb at the box office." And apparently, like, they were sold out. They had to do like 6 screenings or something.
That's awesome.
Because it was such a cult classic. So yeah,
it is.
If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. It's great.
Yep. Got to check out Monster Squad.
Yeah. It's kind of the monster version of Goonies, I guess.
It really is. Yeah. I've never thought of it that way, but it really is. So you've got a Kickstarter going.
I do.
I kind of touched on it at the beginning in the intro.
It's been pretty cool. I had a few people sort of say, "Oh, I'd love to see, an annual type of thing where you bring out a whole lot of issues together." And I sort of decided on the annual thing because I think it was sort of limited the page count. And this one probably will run around about 140 odd pages of A5 size, which is, I don't know what they call that in the States.
I think it's like A5. As anyone that I reference that stuff here,
okay,
like they'll say it's an A5 size zine.
Because I think you guys, we call it A4, but you guys call it letter, which is a little bit sized differently.
Yeah. I get a little confused with it because we're like the only country in the world that doesn't use the metric system.
So. Metric for the win. But so it's got about 6 days to go, which is pretty amazing, and I think it's funded about 260 odd %. So
awesome.
it's definitely fully funded. And I'm just really chuffed. Like, I knew that there was kind of an audience there, but I didn't quite understand. We
love your work, man. So I'm glad you're getting to see it with this Kickstarter.
Yeah, it was my first Kickstarter, so I was really nervous, and I remember putting the page together, and it sat there and sat there and sat there, and I was too scared, really, to click publish. And then one day I just thought, "Oh, just do it, dude. Like, if it fails, it fails." And it got funded within 24 hours.
Awesome.
So,
congrats.
Yeah. So that was really good. And now it's just sort of slowly growing. I think someone told me you get about a third more in the last 24 hours or so, or 48 hours.
That would be awesome. I'm going to do my best to promote it for you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, like I've seen a few of your posts already, and I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So you're doing a little bit of expansion on some of, is that how I understood it? Like adding some new art with the Kickstarter? Yes.
Yeah. So fundamentally, it'll be a re-edit. Probably look over some of the rules that because most of the stuff in those, especially the early magazines, but definitely in most of them, are rules I actually use in solo games and in other games.
Yep.
And so I've sort of tweaked them over the 3 years. So I'll probably go back and sort of tweak bits and pieces of the rules, but I think they're pretty, having a look at all the articles, and I've kind of compiled them into sort of mini themes, I guess, or sub themes where, you would have dungeon exploration, and then you'd have death, and then you'd have, wilderness exploration and stuff like that. So I've kind of divided them in differently. So the articles kind of all fit nicely together in each chapter.
Oh, nice.
And I think there's 9 chapters. And it kind of flows from like sort of the beginning until like I think death is like the last one. So it sort of flows in a nice orderly fashion. But the big thing is all new original artwork. So I'm getting Alex the map maker we talked about before. I'm just getting him to do all the art, because I really love in books when the art is consistent. Because I think it adds a nice vibe to the whole thing. That's one thing I didn't like about second edition is they used a lot of mixed styles of art.
Yeah, they
Like
really
some
did.
some were like ultra realistic, and others were like black and white. And I just don't think they really had it together. And it wasn't until third came out, and I'm a big fan of 3E, mainly because of the aesthetic values of it. Like it's just amazing. The graphic design in those books, especially the early ones, is just blew me away. So yeah, so I like so he'll be busy over the next couple of months doing all the art I want. And I've got a lot of maps that I'm still going to use for him, because there's a lot of drop-in locations that I did at those early issues, which I'll sort of revamp and do. And I think I'll probably lean more towards the old school, because when I started this, I kind of wanted it to be edition agnostic.
Yep.
And most of it still is. Like I said before, you kind of get inspired by certain things. But I think over the 3 years, I've sort of leaned more and more towards that kind of OSR old school vibe. And because I like that art as well.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of drove this, is I just wanted sort of original art in that book. And the more it gets funded, the more money Alex gets, because the more original art I can put in. So if you don't do it for me, do it for him.
Do it for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, we all stand to benefit from it, because Alex, your artwork is
so
amazing.
So like the content itself you could get, but it's just, I guess, having it in a nice volume. And there's like a standard print and a deluxe version, which I'm still sort of working out. So the print, obviously the deluxe will be better printing and all that sort of stuff, and a different cover. But you know, it's good to have that. It'd be really nice to have it in one book, until the next one comes out. So given the popularity of this one, I'm definitely doing a year 2 at some point.
I'm glad to hear it. I will be there probably day 1. I don't know how I missed when this launched.
I think this is the only chat thing that I've done where I've mentioned I probably could have done more. I probably should have done a bit more, but I've sort of relied on my own fan base to sort of, and they've shared it with their, like, Facebook groups and stuff. And so it's sort of gotten a bit of the word out, which is great. And like I said, I'm chuffed with the funding. So
yeah, I think it's great. You've got 128 backers, I think it is right now. And like you said, 228%.
Hang on, let's have a look. 128 backers, 263%.
Nice. That's awesome. I've got some projects I want to do, and I'm in the same boat as you. I'm going to be terrified to hit that launch button.
It's kind of intimidating. Like, I think for your first one anyway, I think, like, I've seen a few other creators that I've been, interviewed by or whatever, and they've done sort of their side projects, and I can see them get better each time they do it. But it's just taking that first step, I guess, of launching. And you never know when something's going to launch or going to fund, and what's not going to fund. And I think if it doesn't get funded, you kind of get a bit deflated. But there's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't get funded. It's not so much it's a bad product. It's just it could be a big release of someone else, a big company doing something else that month. And that was what I was really worried about, actually, because I think it was around the same time as OSE launched something.
What did they did launch something, and then TCC or Goodman Games also launched the Caverns of Thracia.
Yeah, so I kind of, but then I just on the day I was like, just do it, So I just hit publish, and it's worked out. So.
Hey, what's up, Jim? Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hello,
he says the art is bonkers. I agree. Talking about Dean's art.
Yeah, Dean's a legend. And if you're ever wanting to start a zine or need images and that, go to him, because he's such a nice guy. Like, he's just one of the good people in the industry who just do amazing work.
Nice. Sorry, I was reading this. I keep forgetting I can pop stuff up on the screen. I had been using open broadcast software, and it's so complex to use.
Yeah, I've got a. Oh, hang on, I had private chat on, so I hadn't clicked on comments. Sorry about that, guys. It's all new to me. Hello, what is it? JNS Ellis and family. Hello, thank you.
Yeah, that's my buddy Jim. He tunes in a lot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And great guy. So what do you like to play most of like systems?
Ooh. Okay, so fantasy's my home. It's kind of where I just love to be in fantasy. But if I'm not playing fantasy, there are a few older games that I really love. In the same probably fantasy genre. I love Warhammer Fantasy roleplay.
Yep.
But I'm a bit of an old bastard, if I can say that.
Oh, yeah, you can say whatever you want.
So I like the original. So first edition Warhammer Fantasy just hits the spot for me. It's just so dark and dirty and horrible that it's great. And then other probably outside the genre, I love D6 Star Wars, the WEG version. Feng Shui first edition. I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's sort of like a Hong Kong action movie role-playing game by Robin Laws, I think it is, who does a lot of different books.
I have heard Robin's name. I'm gonna have to write.
Yeah, I think he did like a fantasy D&D type book that boiled down a lot of the rules and everything. I can't remember the name of it, but he's been in the industry. He used to do articles for Dragon Magazine and stuff. So he's been in the industry for a long time. And Feng Shui, if you've never played it, it's amazing. It's really good. They did do a second edition a couple of years ago, but I prefer the first edition. The other one is Cyberpunk 2020. Again, the original version, not the red. I don't know what they did with the red, but it just doesn't have the same feel. But it's yeah. So they're probably the games I love. How many hit points and also Gumshoe. I think he did the Gumshoe one. Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Jim knows his games. Like he can pull some games out in random conversation that I'll at times be like, I have to really dig through the archives to find it in my brain.
Yeah, so they're probably the games I love playing. I do a lot of solo stuff these days just because the time and I'm as much I've run games online and I'm not a huge fan. Like I kind of like the sitting around the table thing and getting offline and just doing pen and paper. Again, I'm an old fart.
You can't be that far ahead of me.
Yeah. But I've been doing a lot of solo stuff, mainly using OSE at the moment. But I have got another campaign that I do run with third edition. Yeah, it's really good. I love it.
It is, and I mean OSE. Gavin did such a good job.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can just take something and rearrange it and format it well and have it be much better than the original.
The emphasis being formatted well.
Yeah, because I've like it's so easy just to pick up that book and go, oh, okay, there's the rule. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but he did such a wonderful job with it.
Yeah,
I feel like we keep steering off, which it seems like it's very easy for the two of us to do. But see, now I'm losing my train of thought.
That's all right. I do it all the time.
We're tied here. We're tied. Boy, that thought just went right out of my head.
Was it? You said we were going.
It was to do with the Kickstarter because I really want to.
Okay.
I want to get people hyped up for this Kickstarter for you with those 6 days to go.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what it finishes on. But like I said, I'm just really chuffed that it got funded in the first place and to the level that it is. Yeah, so as I said, like the content goes from the issue 0, which I kind of wish I didn't do an issue 0 now because every time I tell people,
because it's kind of like a session 0.
Yeah, well, that was the idea. That's why I called it issue 0 because it was a session 0, and that was the idea behind it. But now when I tell people, they go, "Oh, you've done 37 issues." Oh, actually, I've done 38. I started at 0. Yeah, so and it gets confusing in my head as well. But anyway, that aside, I think that first issue has been really beloved by a lot of people. Like you can download it for free. That one. Actually, you can download up to about mid-20s for free, the full issues.
Yeah, I think it's.
And then I sort of brought in that whole
where
free
it cuts
versus
off.
paid. Yeah. So, and I kind of did that because I always want to offer a free version of it. But then I kind of thought, would people pay $2 a month for the Patreon to get an extra 2 to 3 articles or whatever, 8 pages? And they have. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. It's a bit of a marketing decision, but I always have that free version because that's how I started. And people, I think it was about the 4th issue I had. I started the Patreon, and I had the first couple are always your friends who want to support you, but I just had a lot of people straight away just jump on. Even though they were getting it for free, they still wanted to support what I was doing. So I was really chuffed about that.
That's great.
Yeah, but the first 8 issues cover a lot of your basics. So there's combat issue, there's a wilderness issue, there's a dungeon issue. I can't remember now. What issues are there? Hang on. A death issue. What else have we got? That's right. The arcane magic and divine magic.
Yes.
There's an undead issue. And actually one of the undead ones, one of my favorite, because it kind of amps up that, amps up the undead. Like I love undead in games, and they should be scary, AF.
Yeah. I agree.
And I think it was kind of brought about by the whole move towards, oh no, I don't like save versus death. I don't like losing levels. I don't, and I thought, you know what? No, I think they should actually be deadlier. So there's a couple of articles in there that really talk about how to, add a rune to an undead, or, add certain components when you're creating the undead, like whether it's herbs or gems or something, and then it gives them additional powers.
Oh, neat.
That will surprise your players. And that was the kind of the point was, just, when they have a skeleton with spells coming out of its eyes, they're really going to sit up and pay attention.
Yeah, because I think most people are very used to walking into the room and being like, there's 2 skeletons with spears.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I think there's one that amps up necromancers, and there's one that amps up vampires as well, which gives you different types of vampires. Nice. Which are kind of the inspiration for that was what is it called? The Vampire Masquerade.
Yes.
Yep. By White Wolf, is it? White Wolf do that still? I don't know.
I can't remember.
But yeah, that was a real inspiration for that, because they have obviously different vampires in that. And that was the kind of inspiration for that one, because I kind of really like that idea where you could have a Nosferatu versus a kind of a more, Dracula type vampire. Right. So you can kind of have, and they will have their different abilities and weaknesses and stuff, and you can sort of mix and match. And so yeah.
Now you're making me really, really, really excited for this book, and I'm still going to have to go back and get the back issues, because as I said, I'm a completionist with everything.
Yeah, I've had a few of those people, excuse me, where they've ordered from the US and they've ordered like half the collection because they haven't got it. And I'm like, oh man, that's a serious collector.
So you mentioned the Patreon. We've talked about it a little bit. What advice could you give to someone out there that might watch this that's, say, kind of like, should I or shouldn't I start a Patreon? And what kind of pitfalls from your experience would you say to watch out for?
For me, it was relatively a no-brainer, but I knew I was going to do this monthly. Like I waited until about the 4th or 5th issue. I can't remember exactly when it was. It might have even been a bit later, but I waited until I knew that I was going to publish this each month. Like regularity on the internet and when you're doing business is just underrated. If you can bring something out at a regular interval and people get used to the release date, even if it's once every 6 months, or 3 months or whatever, and you stick to that, then people will flock to you because they become reliant on that issue being released or whatever.
Right.
And I have a lot of people, not even like patrons, yes, and even non-patrons, like people on Twitter and stuff, like, oh man, that's good. I've been waiting for this issue, or, and that's kind of cool. Like, it's good that people are excited about it. And they know, I think there's been 2 months I've missed. One was a diagnosis for an illness, which threw me for a 6. Which I missed that one, and then I missed another one because I was having treatment for that about a year later. So I've only missed 2 months out of 3 and a bit years. So I didn't think that was too bad.
Not at all.
Having said that, I communicated all that to my patrons, and they understood, and they were, and I didn't charge them for that month. But getting back to your question, I think once you know that you're going to be doing something regularly, and I think that's the trick with Patreon, you need to be doing something kind of semi-regularly and producing content. How much content depends on your lifestyle and stuff. Like, don't overcommit. You're better off undercommitting, and then if you can add bit, yeah.
I overcommit sometimes.
I remember I did this interview with someone, I can't remember who it was, and then the next month he did an interview with a guy, and he mentioned me about doing a zine every month, and the guy was like, "Oh man, how does he do that?"
I can't figure out how you do it. Like,
yeah, well, for me, actually, just on that, because this is kind of important. There's really about 3 or 4 things you need to create at least a zine. It probably could apply to other things as well, and that is writing, or in video, I guess it's just the content you're going to actually talk about. The images and the style are really the 3 main important. And by style, I mean the layout and what. So the writing I could do, I have no problem with that. The images, I discovered stock art, and like I said, I had Alex did a lot of the early images for me, and he still does images for me now. And there's other indie artists who have submitted stuff and all that sort of stuff. So that was it. And then the layout, because I use the same template, I got rid of that because I'm no graphic designer, and layout would take me the whole month just to do a layout, let alone the content for it. So I actually eliminated 2 of those, the art because I can't draw, and the layout because I'm no graphic designer. So I just focus on the writing, and that's it, just the ideas and the writing. And I think that's how I can pump it out every month, because I don't have to worry. I don't have to make it an artistic styled thing. It's just the content. And as long as the content's, presented kind of nicely, with some images and stuff every now and again to break it up, it's pretty easy to do. Like, you just need to have that inspiration, the ideas, and I guess the experience of playing for as long as I have.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
As well. And just bringing ideas from other games or the movies, whatever. Like, I just get inspired by a lot of different stuff. Like, I'll read a blog post online, and I'll be like, hey, I could do something like that, but I'll make it better. Or put my own spin on it. Because I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and everything has been done. Like, if you think of an idea, it's probably already been done.
Yeah.
But what hasn't been done is your spin on it.
Exactly.
So, and that's pretty much what these zines are, is my interpretation of the game, my spin on the game. And you'll find a crowd who like it. Like, look at Morgborg or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Like that is so out there, but they've got a huge audience,
Yeah.
for it. And
I love that system. And
yeah, I haven't, it doesn't really appeal to me for some reason. I don't, whether it's just the art or whatever, I don't know. I've never really been hooked, but I love the idea. And I think it came out of that time period where Wizards of the Coast were like vanillaizing D&D. And then you had this thing just come up, which was the exact opposite of it. It was like everything Wizards wanted to take out, they put in, and then they dialed it up to about 106. Yes. And and that was great. Like, that's what we need, I think, in the industry, is more of that stuff. And I wouldn't say my stuff is dialed up that much, but it's just I kind of like it because it kind of replaces that Dragon magazine that no one gets anymore.
Yeah.
And I've had so many people just say, oh man, this just reminds me of Dragon. And that just makes my heart sing, because it's exactly what I wanted to create.
Well, I will tell you, when I come home and I open up my mailbox and I see that airmail envelope.
Yeah.
I swear I turn into a little 5-year-old and rip that envelope out of my mailbox and run into the house, rip the envelope open. And I'm like, yeah. And then I'll sit right down and dig into it like I used to.
I've got a couple of patrons who because I released the PDF immediately, and because overseas, because I'm in Australia, it takes like 2 to 3 weeks before you guys get the zine in physical form. He doesn't look at the PDF. He waits for the physical copy just so he can sit down with a cup of tea.
Me too.
Yeah. I've had a few people tell me that, and I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Yep, I don't like spoilers, and it's like I told you, it's like it is like being a kid again when I find that envelope in my mailbox. So
yeah, I've had a couple of people say that. I should really get like a nice yellow envelope or something, but postage being what it is, I have to use the prepaid Australian post office stuff. So,
hey, it works for me.
Yeah.
Oh, I had asked you earlier, and I've got to say my favorite cover is right here, issue 17.
Oh yeah, that's actually a non-Dean Spencer one, I believe. I can't remember who did that one.
Let me see if I can.
I think in the first couple of pages, it'll tell you who did the cover art under the acknowledgements.
Rick Hershey.
That's right.
Rick does great art as well.
I think that was one of the first ones I did, which wasn't Dean Spencer. Maybe from memory, I don't know. I don't know how far. They're all a blur.
I'll have to dig back. I'll make a list for you of everyone except for Dean.
I think just talking about my favorite issue, I still think my favorite issue is the Wilderness Survival one, which is issue 8, which will be in the Kickstarter one.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so it's issue 7, but it's the 8th issue.
I can see how you would get confused because
I know.
0. Because when I said you're working on 37, you're like, yeah, then I'm working on 38. Wait.
yeah. It's like, like I said, I work in like kind of in a, I kind of, because I used to just work one silo, but then I kind of got all these ideas for other things as I was writing. So I'm like, okay, I'll set them all up. I'll just, if I get an inspiration for like the wilderness instead of the dungeon, I'll do something in there. So that way at least I can combine those series together in a more sort of they're sort of threaded together. So if you want to buy them, you could just say buy those 3 if you're interested in exploration, which is one of the things that I think modern D&D is sorely lacking, and that is one of my favorite pillars of the game. Is that exploration stuff. So yeah.
Another thing, not that I don't dislike 5e by any means, but there are some faults. One of them being the resting. Like I remember playing with my brother when I was a kid, and when you'd go to camp for the night, it was like a big thing.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, yeah, we're going to take a short rest. We're going to take a long rest. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I hope they do change that in the next edition. Not that I really care, because I've gone away from that modern D&D now. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. The art doesn't appeal. And not saying it's wrong. It's just for me, I love that old black and white, art where the players are struggling to survive, as opposed to them being like superheroes. Might as well just put capes on everyone. And even the style of art,
I think all of us say is it's
like
playing a superhero.
So I don't like the aesthetic, and I don't like how they've kind of vanillaized everything. So I don't really care that much what they do with it, because I've still got the old stuff,
right,
and my own stuff. Again, I've lost I'm 2-1. I've lost my train of thought on the question.
Next serve is mine on this one.
But yeah, I just love the old aesthetic. I just, there's something about those. Oh yeah, we're talking about resting and stuff. There was oh no, I've lost my train of thought again. That's 3-1. You're winning.
Give it a minute.
Oh yeah, so about resting and stuff. Yeah, so I hope they change that in the next edition, because I think the short and long rest, like, it's like anytime the players kind of even hint at being in trouble, they go, oh, short rest.
Yeah.
And then they just get it all back, and you're like, I can still remember the session of the game that I was running in 5e that made me give up on 5e. And it didn't have so much to do with that. It was just a overpowered spell and ability that just totally had all the players go from all crap. Like I think they were rust monsters. Like I did like a cavern with like 20 rust monsters.
Oh wow!
And everyone
You're
was like,
mean.
yeah, I am. Holy crap! And then the cleric just did this spell. It just killed them all, 1/1. And then everyone was like, oh, okay. And I just went, oh, okay. There goes the whole tension for that combat. Like it last, you know, and I just went, I don't want to do this anymore, you know, like, so, yeah, so I really like that, the traditional pillars of D&D, like the exploration especially, and I feel like that has just been ripped asunder, and it just doesn't matter anymore. And the good thing about doing that, like, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the guy being interviewed, I can't remember who it was, said that he saw D&D as a resource management game.
Yes.
And I tend to agree with that, although that sounds completely and utterly boring. The flow-on effects from resource management are huge for role-playing, for example. Like if you go dungeon delving and you buy out all the torches and lantern oil from the town,
there's no
you're gonna have to go further afield or do a deal with a merchant in town or whatever. Like, so there's heaps of these role-playing opportunities tied in with that people don't realize. And I think that's what's missing. I think is that not only are you taking away a pillar, like a core pillar of the game, you're then affecting the other pillars and weakening them at the same time.
I would agree.
Yeah. And like even like simple things like reaction rolls. So the monsters might not want to fight you. You know,
right.
They might have had a bad day. You know, the orcs might have been beaten up by some bugbears already and they don't want to fight you. So they're like, okay, we'll give you a map or some money or something, you know, like
just leave us alone.
Yeah. And so you win, but you didn't have to fight them, you know.
Right.
Well, that's cool, you know.
I feel like modern D&D promotes murder hobos.
I think they've always been in the game, and
yeah.
there was a thread on Twitter saying someone posted they didn't like the failed state kind of OSR theme where you know, where combat is the last resort. Like if you're in combat, you've done something wrong. And I actually really like that idea. I like the fact that if you research hard enough and you know your stuff and you prepare, and if you can go through a dungeon without fighting anything, you've won the dungeon. You know, I think, and I kind of like the idea of that failed state. The terminology is a bit, but the idea behind it. And there was a whole lot of people on Twitter just going, I just love smashing stuff. I love the combat, you know, and it was like, while combat is fun, like let's admit it, like it's cool chopping off an orc's head.
It is.
Or like killing the dragon and then getting its stuff. For me, the love of D&D especially is the exploration part and the research. Like I'm one of those players who, you know, play a smart wizard and go and research who built the dungeon, you know, how long has it been around, and you know, I'm one of those annoying players that do all that before we actually go into the dungeon, because you know it helps. Like, what spells am I going to take? You know,
yeah.
So yeah, I sort of like that preparedness and that planning and the stuff. So yeah, so I kind of like combat's fun, but I like the idea of combat, I think, more than the actual combat, if that makes sense. Like
yeah, it does.
I like the threat of combat, but if you can work around it, you've done well.
Yeah, because it's like that heart racing moment. Can I get around the corner without the orc seeing me, or whatever?
I remember I was playing actually with Alex the map maker. He might be able to remember this. It wasn't that long ago. We were playing a one-off game, and it was like a continuation of their campaign, which was 5e, I think. I just played like one game of it, and it was the Giant series, the old G1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
And we went into the Fire Giants lair, and he was talking to some Dark Elves, and they obviously weren't getting along with each other. And I was playing a wizard, and I went, hey, why don't we just like maybe make a deal with one of the parties, and then we could, you know, upserve the Fire Giants' power. Like maybe if we made a deal with the Drow, then we could help them get rid of the giants. And everyone else at the table's like, no, let's just run in and kill them. I'm like, oh man. Okay.
There's actually, it's funny because it just popped into my head. Going back to the rest thing, there is a great book. I don't have it right in arm's reach, that Lucas Palisori put out about enhancing rest in your games. And it's basically a camping and wilderness navigation, if I remember correctly. I'll have to dig up the name after we're done, and I'll send you the name of it.
Good. I love books like that, like the indie industry, and I kind of, because I built this platform up, I kind of want to use it to celebrate other indie creators. And there's so much good stuff coming out. Like I read some of the stuff and go, man, my zine sucks. Like it's a terrible way to think, and that thought doesn't last long, but it's like, man, this is just awesome. But I love anything, like if it has exploration on the cover, sold, take my money, So
for me, it's undead on the cover, like a skull or a vampire or something. But
undead are cool. Let's face it.
There's nothing.
My favorite sort of subtype of monster. I mean, I love the humanoids. Like I love I really like goblins and orcs and stuff because you can add to them like really easily. Like you can make them cool. Because they're just a base monster. They just have hit points and an AC and a weapon. But you can give them powers. Like in my campaign world, for example, goblins can actually change and morph and gain powers of whoever rules them. So they have like a powerful matriarch, who might be a shade, for example. And so they all of a sudden, their complexion goes grey or, sort of black, and they have better hiding in shadows abilities and stuff like that. And there's another one I wrote up in one of the recent zines about goblins following a Medusa. And so they walk around with snakes wrapped around, like poisonous snakes wrapped around them, and the poisonous snake gets an extra attack as well as the goblin. Stuff like that. That's cool. And that's right. The goblins can see in ethereal plane as well, because that's what Medusas can.
Nice.
So you can't even go ethereal and try, because they can see you. But like I just love stuff like that. Like I love those creatures because you can add stuff to it and change it and make them cool and come from different tribes and abilities. Like hobgoblins are great because you can just create this military tactic manual for them for each different clan. Like that's the stuff that I really enjoy. Like messing around with stuff that's already there. But undead are good too because again, in my world, there's always a mark on the undead, so who made it. So it's like the wizard mark, but that wizard mark can also add powers to the undead. And so when you kill one, the cleric in the game would be like, oh, okay, where's this mark? I've got to see the mark. So then he can try to trace back where the necromancer came from or where the undead came from or whatever. So
I'm writing that idea down. I really like that.
I think that's actually in one of the zines, I think. I don't know.
You will have to forgive me because it's now almost 30 issues that I've read through. And it's funny, I was saying to my fiance before I had spoken to you about coming on, I go, I've got to reread these and then I want to get Russ on. And then I saw the Kickstarter when I finally paid attention to what was going on in the Patreon. And I'm like, oh no, I got to get Russ on.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I really, really enjoyed the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm having a blast talking.
Yeah.
So I'll keep you on here all night as much as I can talk.
As I said, I could talk gaming all day, but I can't talk all day. I wish I could. I do have family responsibilities, but
I've got a couple more questions for you actually that kind of pop into my head, and it's funny because we're now 3-2. Because I just lost my complete train of thought.
3-2.
Yeah, I just wrote down branded undead, and as soon as I wrote that down, I'm picturing them lining up and just.
I'm just picturing like them sponsored by Kmart or Walmart or something, and then have like a barcode on their forehead.
Scan them.
That'd be a good cyberpunk kind of thing to do, wouldn't it? Have undead in cyberpunk and have them like promoted by some corporation.
Shows the characters in peril. See, exactly that. D&D art is
You,
great.
you've hit it, George.
What was it? I have stuff here.
You said you had a couple more questions.
Yeah, and they I had thought them up in listening to you, and then it just went
Zine.
So technically we're 3-3 because I had 2 questions.
Humanoid, monsters. I'm just
I know one thing one was going to be a statement of one thing I really liked about 5e is the ability to play a goblin. I played one called Blint the Undying because no matter what the GM did, they could not kill me. And we went into this town and there was a little shrine set up that had a deck of cards on it. So my goblin's looking there. He's like, well, he loved he was a klepto. So if he saw anything sitting out, he would take it.
So you're basically playing like a Kinder.
Yeah, and he went up and he's looking at the deck, and everybody in the party's like, "Don't touch that," because they knew what it was. And I'm like, and they all looked, and I'm like, I want to do sleight of hand and take the deck of cards. So I did, and I got like a 22 or something like that, and I got the cards. And while we're walking along, I pulled out the deck, and I pulled the card, and I got the Avatar of Death. And that's how he earned the name of Blint the Undying, was because I fought the Avatar and won.
Nice.
And and the GM is sitting there. She was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? I cannot kill this guy." And I'm like, "Nope, he's Blint the Undying."
Reminds me of a couple of games, like when you get through a session and you haven't lost a hit point.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there and you don't want to say it until the end of the session. Like I didn't lose any hit points this session. Woo! Like, because you know the GM's going to be sitting there going, "Oh, you didn't, did you? Okay."
Yeah, I cannot think of what my questions were. I
must admit, sorry, just to riff on the Goblin PC thing. I'm a big believer in, and it's just me again. Nothing's wrong or right. It's just what I prefer. Monsters staying monsters. Only because I feel like it's a slippery slope, and I've seen it already where there's books up there where you can play undead, and I'm like, oh man, like, or a beholder. I'm like,
yeah,
and I think
it's taking it a little too far.
I think when that happens, monsters stop being scary.
Yes,
and like if you think traditionally how monsters came about was that people were shit scared to go in the forest. Because there was creepy stuff in there, or they'd tell their kids not to play near the well because there's an old witch in there. Like those stories involved monsters and fae and evil fae and all that sort of stuff for a reason, because they were actually literally scared. And so I like that idea where, if you do have if you put a weight or a lich or something in front of the PCs will freak out.
Yeah.
Even like if you go in and you say, you want to slay a lair of goblins or whatever because they're attacking farmers or whatever. If someone's playing a goblin, you're like, okay, they immediately don't become scary anymore, or a threat anymore. Like, oh, I'll just get the goblin guy to talk to him and get him, like, I don't know. Like it just, I get the appeal, but I kind of like monsters staying monsters for that reason, because I think, there's nothing better than putting a monster down on a table or whatever, or even describing one and another player clicks and go, oh crap.
My GM for that game, Maggie, and if you're watching, it was awesome.
Thanks, Jim.
She made me a monster. Like I would go into town and people would throw like rotten fruit and stuff at me.
And that's cool.
And we went into this one town and they're like, "What are you doing with this thing?" And I just played this. I could barely speak. You know, it's like I knew like 5 words, and I'd be like, "Me blint," and they'd be like, and they'd be like, "Get this thing out of here," and that ended. And then I would play a goblin. I had a lot of fun getting stuff thrown at me, and as weird as that sounds, of being the pariah of the group.
I thought Pathfinders did goblins well, but I would have probably called them gremlins, because they pretty much act like gremlins from the movie.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's where they got their inspiration from, and that I could kind of, I don't know. Again, I don't love it, but I thought they kind of did a different take on the goblin in that.
Yeah, they definitely have a completely different goblin in
it's just a different feel to it.
5e.
Yeah. So I think, like, again, like monster PCs have been in the game since first edition. Like, there's even a book for second edition where it's just a book about playing monsters.
Right.
So it's always been there, but I've just never really liked it. You know,
that was the only time I've done it. And that I can think of. Usually, like I was telling you before we went on, I'm relatively boring as a player sometimes, because they're like, "All right, we know Dave's playing a thief," and it's like, but I change it up every time. Like you never get the same thief twice.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about, I guess, playing one class. Like, I always wanted to do like a party of like bards, like not the new 5e bards, but like the old bards, and everyone plays a bard. But like, say, third edition would be good, because you could add different things, or second edition you could take different kits.
Yep.
But it'd be cool just to have everyone, and then just see the differences between, like, everyone's still playing the same class, but just to see how the differences come about as they evolve and play and stuff. I like that idea where you're all playing the same. Like, I played a game of Middle Earth where we were all hobbits, and I died horribly. But
I died horribly.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex, if he's still watching. And yeah, so you know, that was cool. Like, I like those kind of ideas where you're just grouping it. You're playing the same.
George said Perilous Wilds with a question mark.
I was just reading here.
Oh, I'll pop it back up. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just reading Jim's
comment
about monstrosity in your group. I think it'd be kind of cool if you all played monsters and you were trying to keep those pesky adventurers out.
That could be fun. Yeah.
That'd be cool. There's a couple of board games, like card games like that, where you design the dungeon and you're the monsters in the dungeon, and you got to find the adventurers that come in. Like, I think that would make a good campaign.
There's actually a role-playing game that I played up at my local game store. It's called Skeletons. And you play a skeleton, and in the instance we were all protecting a tomb.
Yeah.
And like people came in to loot the tomb.
Yeah.
And as soon as they did, we reanimated.
Yeah.
And it was basically just a narrative storytelling game of what we did. And in between each scene, the GM would dim the lights, and then it would come back awake when the lights came up, when the next group of adventurers came in. And I got to play to the point I was hiding in the shadows, and one of the adventurers was standing right on the edge. And I'm like, well, this is perfect. Right on the edge of the shadows, and I reached out and grabbed his ankles and dragged him into the darkness with me.
Nice. That's
so
awesome.
I don't have a problem playing like that, Jim.
Yeah. You just gave me an idea, like shadow skeletons. Now that would be scary.
That would be scary. I like that. I'm even going to write that one down, because
I like the idea. You could have like shadow, like gray or black sort of bones, like the necromancer reanimated it with like a sliver of the shadow plane.
Yeah.
Or something. That's kind of cool.
Or even if the skeleton had Jim says I'm morally flexible. You're not supposed to tell people that, pal. See there, I'm up 4-3.
Oh, there you go.
What were we
We're
talking
about?
about?
Shadow skeletons and
yeah, like the skeleton, say the owner of the skeleton, I guess you could say, prior to becoming a skeleton, could have been caught in a volcanic eruption and it burned the skeleton. So it's
yeah,
dark.
that's true. I was thinking you could even have like a shade, which is part human, part shadow, and maybe they died and became the shadow skeleton. That'd be kind of cool.
That would be.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to start really scaring myself trying to think of.
Yeah, I really like the shadow. Like, I don't like the shadow fell. That's what 5e did to it. But in my campaign, I have like a shadow plane, which is a shadowy reflection of the actual material plane. So it has everything the material plane has in it, but it's like this shadowy, dark, desolate, sort of like in
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yeah, kind of like that.
Yep.
So you would have this, like if you had a city. The city in the material world would be this bustling city, but in the Shadowfell, the Shadow Plane, it was just this
something
kind of,
out of Thundar in the dark.
Yeah, like kind of a ruin, but it's all dark, and and there's the lights only work like half the radius as normal because the darkness sort of closes in on you. So that's kind of cool. I did a game
flash of lightning and just see an army of skeletons on the horizon, and you're like,
yeah, there's one big bad, which is a green dragon in my campaign world, and the characters, I didn't plan this at all. The characters went through this portal into the shadow plane, and the equal of that was a shadow dragon. And the shadow dragon was trying to encourage them to help him destroy the green dragon so he could take the place. So there was the same threat, but just a different type of dragon. And they were sort of trying to observe each other.
Sounds like a shadow dragon would be a little bit worse than a green one.
Yeah, shadow dragons are tough, man. Their breath takes levels away from you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You want to be hit by one of them.
I remembered one of the things I was going to say. We were talking about the Shadowfell. I do not like what was done with it in 5e either. I was not a really big. I kind of came on back into gaming. I was out of it for about 15 years and came back into it towards the end of 4e. But I think 4e did a really good job with the Shadowfell.
Yeah.
Comparatively to, and I think like the dragons in 4e are way meaner than they are in 5e.
Yeah, I mean, I think I never really played 4e, but I've read a bit, and I do like the Pokemon collection idea. Anyway, sorry, I digress. I think I like 4e as a battle game. Like, I think there's a lot of tactics stuff in there. And I think it would make a really cool skirmish type game.
Yes.
But as a role-playing game, I'm not so sure it worked.
No, they're
their long and short rests are even worse than 5e.
Didn't they fully restore you, if I recall, like a short rest?
Basically, 10 minutes later, you're fine.
Yeah. It's like you've got a bunch of like weapon X's out there that get cut and they just heal up.
Every time I think about it, I always imagine these characters in these mech suits for some reason. We jumped on Pathfinder pretty early when 4e came out, and stuck with that for a while. But yeah, and then obviously I actually took a big break of gaming during that time. Not sure why. And then when I came back to it, 5e was out, and I tried to run a few campaigns, and they just didn't fit well. So I just rediscovered the old stuff and just stuck there.
Yeah, when I came back into playing, I got into 5e. I've got almost every book, and then kind of the same thing happened with me. I'm like, I'm not really feeling playing Superman all the time. And then I discovered the indie scene, and
yeah,
that's really what my channel's focused on.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's good
Forbidden Lands is an awesome game.
Yeah, I was about to comment on that. Yeah, I want to play. I haven't played it yet. But
well, if I do
yeah,
run
I
a
really
game, you've got an open invite, because the Wolfkin in it are awesome. That is my favorite race in that game so far. The Wolfkin.
I always like what they did with Dark Sun, with the halflings are basically cannibals.
Yes.
And they're scary as, AF.
Yep.
That was kind of cool. I like the fact that halflings suddenly became ultra scary because they ate people.
As they do.
Yes, that ragdoll to a warg was how my hobbit died in Alex's game. Shaking like a ragdoll.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's
the best
bad.
way to go.
Well, I know you've got to get back to the family and stuff.
Back to real life.
Anything that we haven't touched on regarding at least the Kickstarter or the Patreon that you'd like to bring up? May watch this in the future.
Well, the Kickstarter is still going, obviously, if you're watching this live or in the next couple of days. So it's got 6 days to go as I talk. I will be obviously it takes a couple of months to get it all together and then send off what I need to for the people who supported it. But eventually I will release it as a standalone, print book. So if you do miss out on the Kickstarter and you don't get in, get an early edition, there will be options at some point down the line, but it might be 6 months away before I have it up on drive-through or something like that. So as far as Patreon goes, $2 gets you access to my chat, which I talk about every issue before it comes out, and then early access to each monthly zine. Plus, if you go to a certain tier, you'll get the physical copy sent to you. My website has a web store where you can buy individual copies. If you only want certain ones or you're only interested in a particular bundle or theme. And Drive-Through RPG, you can buy the PDF if you just want it to, support me just as a one-off instead of Patreon, which is monthly. And you can get the full PDF version from that if you want the full one as well. So there's quite a few different ways you can support me and get the zines and have fun with it.
Yeah, the Patreon is so worth it. I love it. And
I'm trying to add stuff to it. I'm trying to add the value to it. I'm just trying to figure out ways I can do that.
Well, I think you really nail it for the price with what you're charging for what I get every month in my mailbox. Yeah. You will not hear a single gripe from this guy. So
yeah, the trouble with living in Australia is it's so far away from everything. I mean, that has its positives as well, given what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, shipping sucks. And I guess that's also why I kind of stuck with zines as well, because it was I knew it would be the cheapest option to send.
Right.
But even that costs, to send to America and stuff costs about $8 or something. Like it's, maybe even more than that. I don't know. I can't remember. But yeah, whereas it costs like $2 in Australia. So
wow.
Yeah, like it cost me $2.20 to send something to someone in Australia.
Wow, that's a big difference. And
yeah, it's huge. And that's the cheapest way I've researched it. And that the only other thing I could possibly do, and I've thought about this, is do it through drive-through, where I send you a free link and then they print it and send it to you with local postage. Having said that, and I'm doing my Kickstarter, like printing and all the stuff through them, because that was the easiest way for me to do it and not charge people like $50 for shipping. I'm kind of a bit of a control freak. So I like kind of printing the stuff and seeing the quality and actually holding them. And, I like that idea of doing that and then posting it off myself. Because I think that kind of adds a little bit more to it rather than just going through, just getting a code and, I don't know. Yeah. It just seems a little bit more indie, I guess.
I guess, but yeah, I would be happy either way getting these. I mean, like, And I can tell you, Jim, the production quality on these is top notch. So
thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, they do a good job, the printers. I go to a particular place, and I went to one place once. I think it was for the, which issue was it? It was early on, and they did a terrible job. And I felt really bad because I had to send it out, and it was just not up to scratch. So I went back to the guy, and like the people who do it, and they know me there as like the zine guy. I think I come in like every month. I need like 30 of these done. I think they hate me secretly.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it. Well, Russ,
anyway,
thank you so much. Oh, I want to just pop up this last thing from George. It says you were talking about a book about survival and resources. I was suggesting that it might have been Perilous Wilds.
Okay.
The one that Lucas wrote, George, or?
Yeah, there's quite a few indie ones out there. I kind of grab them when
there
I can.
are, and I can't remember. It was a thicker book. I want to say, well, not a thicker book. I'll have to dig it out, and I'll post it in the comments. I'll go dig it out as soon as we wrap up here and post it in the comments from this episode. But
yeah. Also, like, sorry, just as a last thing, my website's full of blog posts as well that you can go and see. And
that's right. Check out Yum DM. I got to put a link for that down below.
Yeah,
when we finish up.
I've been trying to do some what I call web enhancements, which are sort of stuff that didn't fit in the zine. So I just do a blog post, and then I'm sort of looking at getting them a PDF print version of the article at the bottom. And then you can kind of just slip it into the zine.
Oh, nice.
Added content. Yeah.
See, I am so busy. I miss so many things. Like even on the Patreon, it's like,
yeah.
I think when you had messaged me the other day, I left you hanging there for like 2 days because I'm so busy that it's just like, I'm like, oh crap, I got to message Russ back.
Yeah, so. I Patreon's a bit of a, like, they're doing a lot to improve it, but sometimes messages just slip through because I get an email for some of them, but not all of them. And there was one person, I don't know if it was you or someone else, gave me a suggestion on something, and it was like a month before I got back to them because I never saw it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was a month before you got the email.
And no. It was like I never got the email for it. So and then I just looked. I think with the chat, you don't get emails for the chat, but you do for direct messages. And so some of the people would post something in the chat, and I never get notified of it. So I just sort of have to check it now every couple of days. But even then, like sometimes I just miss comments or something. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things you just need to keep checking.
Yep, it is indeed. Well, Russ, George, Jim, and Alex, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. And I've got the link for the Kickstarter below, the Patreon below. I'll get Yum DM added to that.
YumDM.com. Pretty easy.
And yeah, folks out there, if you're, George, Jim, and Alex, have a great evening. And thanks, Jim. Thanks for being so active in there. And thanks, George and Alex. Also, you guys were great. Yeah, but we will catch you next time. Have a great night.
Thanks, Dave.